They were among the first things Doug Ford did upon taking office. Cancel cap and trade, get rid of green energy incentives, and promise to fight the federal carbon tax with everything he's got. Ontario's approach to the energy and environment files could hardly have changed more. Here to help us make sense of it all, we welcome, in Calgary, Alberta, Kenneth Green, Chair in Energy and Environmental Studies at the Fraser Institute. And here in studio, Tom Rand, Managing Partner of the clean tech investor Arcturn Ventures and author of Kick the Fossil Fuel Habit. Sarah Petrovan, Senior Policy Advisor for Clean Energy Canada, and Jim Carhalios, founder of Axe the Carbon Tax, a national campaign to oppose all carbon taxes. And Jim, we welcome you to this program for the first time, and to the others, nice to see you all here again. You've all been here before. Let's just get everybody up to scratch here on what's transpired over the summer, and then we will get to it. Sheldon, this graphic, if you would. The new Ford government scrapped cap and trade right away, one of the first things it did. The previous Liberal government had sold about $2.8 billion in permits, which then went to fund various green energy initiatives. Those initiatives, including the electric vehicle rebate, are now canceled. Doug Ford also put aside $30 million for a legal challenge against the federal government's plan to impose a carbon tax by the end of 2018. The Ford government also canceled 758 renewable energy contracts. It also lost a lawsuit to Tesla over their cancellation of the electric vehicle rebate program and had to pay Tesla's legal bills as well. Let us start with something just very quick. I want to get 2 or 3 adjectives from each of you on how you would characterize the decisions made at Queen's Park over the summer on these energy and environmental files. Let's go to Calgary to start off. 2 or 3 adjectives only. Kenneth Green, go ahead.
It's a good start.
It's a good start. Okay, those weren't all adjectives, Kenneth, but I hear you in spirit. I know what you're saying. To you next. Tom.
Destructive and short-sighted.
Crystal clear. Jim?
Great list to get rid of a bunch of rackets.
Sarah?
Misinformed and expensive.
I think our viewers all know where everybody's coming from right now, so let's get to it. Cap and trade. Would you give us because I'm still convinced, despite the fact that we've done numerous programs on this and had it explained 1,000 times, people still don't know what it is because it's complicated. Your best 30-second definition of what cap and trade is and or was.
Sure. Well, you put a cap on the amount of emissions that are allowed, and you charge people, polluters have to pay to go over that cap, and you reduce the cap over time. So you essentially limit emissions and force them down by making polluters pay who go above that cap.
And you took the money, or you take the money that you get from those polluters and do what with it?
Well, in Ontario, they took the money they raised from those polluters and they used it sort of to double down on climate actions. They were using that money to help people retrofit their homes or industries to try out new technologies to reduce emissions. So it was a double down bet. You don't have to do that. You could be revenue neutral, but the Ontario Liberals chose to double down with the revenues.
You were never thrilled with that, were you, Jim?
Well, no, obviously I started my Axe the Carbon Tax campaign over a year ago. And I always said the national conversation depends a lot on the position the PC party was going to have. And lo and behold, the PC leader is now the premier and Doug Ford. And cap and trade did one thing really, really well, and that was drive up the revenue for government, the government of Ontario. That's what it did really, really well. It also funneled a bunch of money down to California, but the initial revenues it was going to raise was $1.9 billion. And I call it a racket because it wasn't going to do what it was sold on doing. And it was misrepresented to taxpayers. And I'm glad to see it go with the first priority of the government.
Sarah, what was your view on it?
We have a climate problem. Forest fires in BC, flooding in Toronto. It's expensive. There is no golden goose to solve climate change that is going to be extremely popular with everybody and cost $0. We have to stop pretending that's what it is. So what I'm interested to know is for those who are against a cap and trade program or against carbon pricing, which is found to be the most economically efficient way of reducing pollution, what would you do instead and how much does it cost?
Hold off on that reply because we're going to get to that. We're going to come to that later.
Looking forward to it.
Ken, let me get to you. Your view on cap and trade is and or was what?
Sure, I've never been a fan of cap and trade. It's a mechanism that has certain applicability to some pollutants, but it's not well suited for greenhouse gas controls. It is also fundamentally stealthy. It is essentially a carbon tax, but it's implemented in a way that consumers don't get to see the tax bill directly. They just see higher cost goods and services. And it's also rife with cronyism because various industries will threaten to leave if they don't get free carbon credits, and the carbon credits are allocated politically rather than, generally speaking, being fully auctioned. And so I've just, because sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide both end in dioxide, doesn't really mean that cap and trade is applicable to both pollutants, and I don't think it is for carbon dioxide. I also don't think a carbon tax is useful for carbon dioxide because it's not going to be global, which means if you raise the tax here, the carbon emissions will just leak elsewhere.
Let me pick up on that because, in fact, Tom, I'll put this poll to you. Ipsos conducted a survey of Ontarians, and apparently 68% surveyed said that they agreed with the following statement. Carbon taxes are a pointless symbolic gesture that will cost Ontarians a lot of money and do little for the world's climate. Was that a problem for those of you on your side of the argument trying to advance this?
I think you can differentiate the idea of putting a price on carbon and raising taxes, right? So I think the mistake the Ontario government made, the Liberals made, was not in having their initial policy revenue neutral. If it's revenue neutral like BC's carbon tax, you can't accuse it of a big government. You can't accuse it of raising taxes, and those arguments are gone.
Revenue neutral meaning whatever they take in, we give back in tax cuts or whatever?
That's right. So if I raise money in carbon taxes, I reduce sales taxes or payroll taxes to sort of make it equal. So I'm not getting any net revenue. It makes it very robust come the next election because you can't run on a platform to raise the taxes that you've reduced for the carbon tax. So I agree, if you want a robust, politically neutral solution that's economically viable and efficient, you make it a revenue neutral carbon tax. Now, Glenn Murray was a carbon hawk, and he decided to double down on climate action. I agree. I think we are in an emergency. I think it is time to double down. But I think it's a mistake not to come out of the gate with a policy that is much more politically robust and make it revenue neutral.
Let me put that revenue neutrality idea to Jim. If the carbon tax, now you first opposed it when Patrick Brown was the leader of the PC party, and it was part of the PC party platform.
Right.
And I think his was supposed to be revenue neutral. So the revenue neutrality aspect of it still didn't make it popular with you. Is that right?
Not only unpopular with me, but as you said, the Ontario population. There's no such thing as a revenue neutral tax. There are winners and there are losers. It's the equivalent of saying you're going to the store for a sale and there's a 50% discount, and you make your purchase and the person behind you in line is getting the 50%. There's no such thing as revenue neutral. At least the NDP government in BC has now admitted they're giving up this myth that the carbon tax is revenue neutral there. And so I think it's a misnomer to suggest that there's such thing as a revenue neutral carbon tax.
If you take $2 billion in taxes in from a carbon tax and you cut people's taxes by $2 billion, how is that not revenue neutral?
Because the individual who's paying the tax, $1,000 a year at some estimates, is not going to get $1,000 back at the end of the year. And so it's giving the impression to the taxpayer that if they pay this tax, at the end of the year, they're going to see some sort of a refund or a rebate that's going to make up for the increased tax that they are paying. And I think that's misleading to the individual taxpayer that you're trying to sell this program to. And in BC, we've seen that those tax credits or the return of that tax money goes into industries, specific industries that the government is favoring. For example, to movie stars and the film industry to make up for it. So the idea that there is a revenue neutral carbon tax has been proven to be false.
Let me get Sarah on that. Do you agree with that?
I disagree. I disagree. I think, we spend a lot of time in Ontario saying, well, what about for the people that can't afford gasoline? What about people that can't afford to pay more on their home heating bills? You can come up with a series of programs. You can design a system in such a way to help those people. Yes, you can cut some money off of income taxes, and you can come up with a whole bunch of programs designed to help people lower their energy bills. So there's lots of different ways that you can support different Ontarians at different levels who need it across the economy through carbon pricing, and you can reduce emissions at the same time. It's cheaper than doing it through regulation, which also comes with pitfalls for industry and for business. So I fundamentally don't understand why we're against helping people save money.
There's no free lunch here, right? I mean, we have a climate problem. We have to find a way to reduce emissions. So you can do it through regulation, you can do it through a carbon tax, you can do it through cap and trade, but you have to do it somehow, and none of them are free, right?
Yep.
So I think what smells of disingenuousness to me is when the political right, who have always championed market-based solutions to problems, now suddenly take the two most relevant market-based solutions, cap and trade and a carbon tax, off the table. So it is relevant to say, well, what are you replacing it with? That's a relevant question to ask because it isn't free. And if the right in this country is suddenly stuck with saying, I'm going to take a regulatory approach, they are either going to cost us more money because it's less efficient, or they're being disingenuous and they're simply not going to do anything.
Let me get
I have
Jim.
to-
Let
I
me
have to
just
throw a
hang on.
couple of
Stand
things
by.
on the table.
Stand by. Let me get.
Ken's eager to go.
Ken is eager to go. Let me get Jim to respond to the notion that you guys are hypocritical because you want market-based solutions. They've given you two. You've rejected them both. Jim, and then we'll get Kenneth after that.
It's absolutely not a market-based measure when government steps in and adds a price to a product. It's not a market-based system, but at least Tom is being honest about a couple of things that politicians, especially from the Trudeau Liberals, have not been forthright about. There's a cost to this. For the last 2 years, we've heard it's going to put money in your pockets. It's going to grow jobs. It was all rosy, the picture, to the individual taxpayer until things started to reveal themselves. And there is a cost to this. And I call it a racket because government has been covering up at the federal level, and some Manchurian conservatives, as I like to call them, have been covering up what the cost of cap and trade and a carbon tax will cost the individual, and have not been forthright about how high that cost is going to go, and if it's actually going to solve the problem. In BC, emissions have not gone down. They have not met their targets, and they've had a carbon tax for a very long time. So it's not putting money in everyone's pocket. Sure, it gives the government the opportunity to pick winners and losers if you implement a $2 billion tax in Ontario, but it's not solving the problem.
Kenneth?
So goodness, lots of points. First of all, carbon pricing, the reason that I don't believe in carbon pricing, I'm an environmental scientist by training. I think pollutants are different and they have to be handled differently. Yes, pricing can work to reduce some, like acid rain emissions and methane emissions, but it's not the universal solution, and I don't think it's directly properly applied to controlling greenhouse gases. I agree there's a problem. I've written about this for 20 years. Climate change is real. It poses risks. But the option that I noticed some of my other panelists here, haven't put on the table is we can adapt to the changes when they occur using standard market mechanisms, like pricing water at full cost, pricing electricity at its full cost, pricing highways at their full cost. We can do that, and we can use conventional engineering solutions for the hydrological problems, which are the majority of the threat of climate change, which we've had technology for 5,000 years or so. So I think the adapt and mitigate and research and development for more and low-cost, cleaner, less polluting energy products is an equally viable solution to throw on the table.
Okay, Kenneth, hang on a second. We have Sarah champing at the bit here to get in on what you just said. Sarah.
So let's throw some numbers on the table if we really want to talk about adaptation. So beginning of August, $80 million in insured damages caused by the flood. I believe it was on August 7th. About $1 billion if you consider all of the uninsured damages. About the size of 1 million football fields in BC on fire, with health costs due to people that are having trouble breathing due to the smoke in the air. Then we've got jobs that are lost through the forestry industry because forests have burned down. All of that costs an obscene amount of money. So if we're looking at an adaptation plan, how all of a sudden do we come up with billions of dollars on the fly for climate-related damages that are only going to increase?
Yeah, we actually can't adapt if we don't mitigate. So I get that we need to adapt, and I get it is important to think about adaptation. But the idea that we don't mitigate and adapt is an impossibility, right? 4 to 6 degrees Celsius of warming. The U.S. military has stated publicly at past 3 degrees, they cannot guarantee national security. You can't adapt to that kind of a world. So we need to mitigate and adapt. And in mitigation, we have a moral responsibility as members of the developed world who need to take a stand. Canada, I know, does not back off the great moral questions of our time. So from a moral perspective, we need to stand up as a global citizen, as part of Canada, and make our move. But I think from a self-interested perspective, there's something in play here too, which is jobs. The clean tech market is projected to be $2 trillion by 2030. Clean energy is already $400 billion a year. It's larger than fossil fuels on new energy installs every year. Ontario, by putting in cap and trade, was saying we are establishing an economic ecosystem that is supportive to those companies that are chasing the single biggest economic pie of the 21st century, which is technology that underpins the transformation. We're in the transformation to a low-carbon economy. We're in the first decade of a multi-decadal transformation. If you think we can keep making money selling high-carbon fuel to the rest of the world, you're sleeping. So I think it is also an economic stand to say, someone's going to have jobs 10 years from now selling that kind of technology around the world. We think we got some great horses in the race in Ontario. And if you're going to India and Guatemala and Mexico and you're looking to sell energy storage systems, big multi-billion-dollar projects, they're going to ask you, where is the project in your home country? Because if you haven't got that to show, you'll lose that contract.
Let me put this to Jim. They are clearly seeing something here that you're not seeing. Why do you not see it this way?
Well, the economic pie is for government. That's the pie. It's government increasing revenues at the fastest rate that they can possibly do.
So
because
is your
none
opposition to this, Jim, is it more ideological in the sense that you just want to starve government from as much revenue as possible?
No, I'm not starving government. This is government asking for more revenue and not being honest about what they're using the revenue for.
So say it was revenue neutral. So say we got so it's revenue neutral to governments. It's not revenue neutral to every individual. But give me that.
At least you've admitted that.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
you.
But
Yeah.
give me that piece.
Yeah.
So that's at least not giving government extra revenue. Would you agree with me that the world is decarboning? There is an enormous market there, and it would be advantageous to us to tweak our tax system in order to emphasize those industries that are feeding into that growing market. Is that not a good thing to do?
So I would not agree that you're decarboning the world from what you call a revenue neutral carbon tax. The other question I have for you is that what is that?
Hang on, hang on. He just asked you something. Hang on, no, just a sec, Kenneth. Hang on one second.
My point
Let's
is
get these
the
two.
world
Go
is
ahead.
decarboning, right? Like the market for solar alone is $380 billion a year right now. The energy storage is going through the roof. So that market's real. Should we not think about positioning our economy to go
let's get
after
an
that
answer.
market?
The wind turbines in this province make up less than 5% of the electricity.
So that's not what he asked.
And
That's not. That
so
wasn't
I
what he
can't
asked.
answer that part first. I
Well,
can't make that part first.
If you want to, but that wasn't the question that he asked you.
So the revenue neutral aspect of it is not decarbonizing the world. That is not what's driving it forward. The United States, in a recent report, you know this report, is #1 in terms of reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. They don't have a carbon tax. So at what point are we saying that's enough? Like at what level are you going to say the dollar per ton? How much money are we just going to give to the government and then they're going to decide how they recycle it? Because I don't know what that level is. Is it 20? Is it 50 bucks
Stand by.
a ton? Is
Let's
it
go
100
to let's
bucks
go
a
to
ton?
Calgary. Come on in, Kenneth.
I think we need to inject a few facts. First of all, the global societies have been decarbonizing for about 150 years or more in the transitions from peat and wood to natural gas, nuclear, hydro. So the process of decarbonization is a long unfolding story, and it's continuing to go with the United States, for example, meeting its greenhouse gas commitments by facilitating the production of natural gas and pricing coal out of the market. And so we are in fact decarbonizing, and we are in fact dematerializing. We're using less materials per unit of production and to make things. So we are on a positive trend. I mean, this idea that we're not on a positive trend is wrong. And as well as the British Columbia, the whole revenue neutrality thing, as was said earlier, revenue neutrality to me means I get my money back at the end of the year, but my incentive is to make changes so that I can use that money to go on vacation rather than use it to heat my home, right? So I have incentives to change my behavior just to get the delayed gratification of other uses of my funds. That's my idea of revenue neutral. The government's ideas of revenue neutral range for everything from I'll give free credits to my auto industry because otherwise they're going to bail, and my steel and aluminum manufacturers, and I'm going to put most of the onus on the households and schools and local community centers. But because, as Rachel Notley said, if the government doesn't keep money, then the tax would be revenue neutral. Well, the government actually has debt. Therefore, by that definition, all taxes are revenue neutral, right? In fact, you pay a tax on your tax. So,
Okay, Ken, let me jump in here because we've got a lot of ground to cover, and I want to make sure we don't get caught shortchanged here. I do want to talk about the upcoming legal fight between the government of Ontario, I think Saskatchewan is in on this as well, and the federal government over the issue of whether the carbon tax is legal or not. We know that if the carbon tax is legal, now that Ontario has gotten out of this game, the federal government says it will impose a carbon tax on the province of Ontario. The Attorney General, Caroline Mulroney, held a news conference several weeks ago in which she said, "We are going to court. We are going to try to stop this tax." She was asked whether or not she thought she had a good case and whether she would win. She dodged the question. Most legal observers, Jim, have not been bullish on Ontario's case here. Are you?
So if you read the opinion pieces, and especially, I forget the lawyer's name right now, that Brian Palliser, the Premier of Manitoba, who's an ardent supporter of a carbon tax, wrote. And I think they've been misrepresented in terms of the predictions. In that legal opinion, he says, I'm going to give you a prediction. And the starting point for what he writes is that this falls in provincial jurisdiction, and the Trudeau federal Liberals are going to have to do their best to get it out. And he predicts that they'll be able to pull it out of provincial jurisdiction and pull it into federal jurisdiction. But in order to do that, the best thing Justin Trudeau is going to have to do, the best foot forward he's going to make, is call it a tax. And it's something that provincial and federal governments have been bending over backwards for 2 or 3 years to say, this is not a tax. This is a behavior-changing mechanism. And I don't know what's worse for the politicians selling this. Are you going to call it a tax at the Supreme Court of Canada, or are you going to tell hardworking Canadians on a salary that what you're doing is devastating the economy and the environment, and that you're a polluter because they're carving out big corporate emitters in Ontario? The federal government's now carved them out. Brian Palliser's given some 5 or 6 big companies an exemption. And are you going to go back to the taxpayer and say, actually, you know when I said polluters are going to pay? You're the polluter, not the big companies.
Well, I actually think there was a missed opportunity for Ford. Ford could have said, I'm going to take the $3 billion that we're collecting every year from an industry that's fully bought into this program, by the way. Industry bought out every auction. They were at the table. I'm going to take that money, I'm going to return it to taxpayers. I'm going to send it a check every quarter with my name on it. I'm going to get the political benefit of having a revenue neutral to the government carbon tax in place, and I can be a climate champion. He lost that opportunity. Instead, he's decided to pick a fight with the feds on climate. It's a fight about climate, and of the vast majority of every party, whether it's Conservative, NDP, Greens, or Liberals, want action on climate. So I think Ford simply wants to pick a fight. I think he's picked the wrong fight, because don't forget, Ford didn't win this election because he ran against cap and trade. He won this election because people were tired of the Liberals. So if he thinks he's got a mandate that says Canadians are okay with the idea that we will not do anything on climate, I think he'll lose that political fight. The legal fight, I don't have any idea.
Okay, we're not going to relitigate why Ford won or lost the election, but we are going to move to, hang on, because again, TikTok.
Okay.
Environment Minister Rod Phillips has said, we believe climate change is a real thing. We believe humans create it. You will see a plan from us shortly. I get that all the steps they've taken so far you haven't been thrilled with, but given that premise, what do you want to see from these guys?
I want the plan to actually reduce emissions. So it actually has to do what it says it's going to do, and it has to do it in a way that is transparent and accountable to Ontarians. So if they're not going to do it through a carbon price, and I can't imagine how else they're going to do it other than through regulation, they better be open and honest with Ontarians about how much that regulation is going to cost.
What do you know, if anything, about what's coming down the pipe?
I don't know anything that's coming down the pipe. I am concerned when they suggest that they're going to achieve the same kind of thing. One thing is for sure, cap and trade is not transparent. So if we're looking for a transparent thing that they're going to introduce, and I'm certainly hoping that they're not going to introduce a carbon price using regulation.
We know they're not going to do cap and trade because they just killed it.
Right.
They've been blunt, absolutely blunt about the fact that they're against a carbon tax. They're going to court to prevent a carbon tax.
They're spending
so what else is there?
Well, I certainly hope they don't do hidden carbon taxes through the use of regulation. So
well,
we'll have
we already
to look
have
out
a
for
bunch
that.
of those, though.
And Ken's right. We do have a bunch of those.
Okay, but
you got to get there somehow, right?
Well, you have to get there exactly. You have to get there somehow. So how do you get
Or just
there?
admit you're not gonna. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually think it would be honest to say we actually don't. We think climate change is real, but Ken is honest. Ken says I think climate change is real, but we can adapt. I think he's wrong about that. But I think for the government to say we're going to have a climate policy, they have no tool. No, there's nothing left in their toolkit.
So I actually agree with Tom on this point. I don't think it's a good idea for conservative politicians who are opposing a carbon tax to, on the outset, say, I agree with the Paris Climate Accord. I actually don't think agreeing with a document that sets the groundwork for a carbon tax is ripe for picking apart your argument.
I'm hearing lots of what we're not going to do. What are we going to do?
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
The first step forward is I think you have to get back to market-centered solutions. Like Tom is suggesting a carbon tax is market-centered. It's not.
So what is there?
Part of the problem is adaptability, like Ken is talking about, is the first one. Another thing that we can do is stop paying corporate polluters with corporate welfare money from the government. Have you ever read the Toronto Star report from 2017 on dirty dollars, where big corporations that are the biggest polluters and paying EPA fines are actually getting corporate government subsidies to cover those fines? Like, we can start from that.
Sarah.
So
Sarah.
Ken has
Sorry,
said,
sorry,
Ken has
environmental laws,
thrown
not the
down on the
American
table
EPA.
what
Those
he would
Canadian.
do if he had the chance to have his perfect plan. What's your
What I would
perfect
do?
plan?
No, hang on, Kenneth. Jim, I want to know what's in your plan, and then I want to go to Kenneth.
And I think I wasn't going to repeat what Ken already said about adaptability and investing in infrastructure.
But is that what you believe?
Absolutely. That's the
Okay.
first part, adaptability. But then you guys were talking about in terms of reducing emissions and reducing pollution. And I'm giving you two other things. First of all, exporting the technologies to India and China, who are number 2 and 3, or the other way around, China and India number 2 and 3, is a must. In any junkets that we're going to, foreign junkets, you got to get those countries to
It's
reduce
more
their
than
emissions.
just a sign, right?
In terms of what?
It's more than just a sign up that says Ontario's open for business.
Well,
We actually have to do something to go out and get those markets, right?
That's not my slogan, but if you're going to go and have deals with those foreign nations and countries, I think exporting our technology there and the biggest emitters should come on side and not carving global deals where those nations are cut out of the process.
Ken, I'd like a short list of what's in your toolkit for attacking the problems of climate change, short of, since I guess you're opposed to cap and trade, carbon tax, etc. What's in your toolkit?
Well, the first and foremost thing is we need to stop actually subsidizing bad risk-taking behavior by making sure people are paying the full cost of insuring their houses, their businesses, their facilities when they put them into climatically fragile areas. There have been studies by a respected economist, Roger Pielke Jr., who shows that the reason we're seeing these increasing damages we've been talking about is not because we're seeing increasing climate problems, but we're seeing increased movement of high-value properties to coastlines where they are susceptible to even historically normal patterns of stormy behavior.
Okay, that's number one. What's
that's
number two?
Like the coastline of Toronto.
Number two is we need to stop underpricing commodities so that we create a real-time, real price signal that show the value of the commodity and the risk to the commodity. So we need real water pricing, we need real energy pricing, we need real transportation pricing that reflects both the risks that as they are perceived by the providers and the values to the consumer, and they can be adjusted in real time. We're not going to be standing here with our feet buried in concrete. If we have a pricing signal, and if indeed, as Tom says, you're going to see this problem in Ontario, the coastal seawater intrusion, you can create an actual groundwater permeability market.
Okay, Ken, that's an acknowledgement. Just so I'm clear, Ken, this is an acknowledgement that people are going to have to pay more. Is that right?
If the risk manifests, yeah. I mean, if we want the status quo, people can change their behavior. But yes, when climate changes, it's going to change things about your home heating installation, your home air conditioning.
Okay,
So it's gonna cost more
Tom
money.
Rand. Tom has the floor.
So none of these suggestions, with the exception of exporting technology to reduce India's emissions, none of these suggestions address emissions at all. None of them address emissions in Ontario or Canada. So if we're going to be intellectually honest, and I think you are, let's just say we're not going to meet Paris Accord. Let's throw it out, and let's just say loud and clear, Ontario, as the biggest economy in Canada, will not do our share on climate. If that's what Ford wants to say, at least it's honest. But none of the suggestions from the other side of the table have had anything to do with reducing emissions. So let's just admit it. You don't care about reducing emissions. So let's just say it. I mean, if that's the case.
Hang on. Let me just confirm that. Let me just
say it.
hang on, Jim. Do you care about reducing emissions?
No, I think there's a leap from what I said to what Tom is suggesting.
So just answer that part. Do you care about reducing pollution emissions?
Absolutely, pollution emissions have been reduced, and in Western developed countries, we do reduce them. We are actually improving all the time. The fallacy in the argument is suggest that the solution is always driven by government. That government always has to step in, and the command and control model from the top and government's going to solve the problem, and it's going to do it as quickly as possible, and things are always going to get better when government comes to that solution.
But isn't it the case that pricing carbon is precisely not command and control? Pricing carbon unleashes market forces
That's
to
untrue.
find the
Come on, Tom, that's
solutions
untrue.
that are most relevant.
At the
That's the whole
cheapest
point
rate.
of it. It is the
That's
most
it's untrue.
decentralized policy.
The government is setting the price. It's actually properly perceived as a rationing system.
Well, okay,
where the
Ken-
government sets the price, the government sets the limit.
let me put this
and
to
they
you.
ratchet it down over the years.
Ken, let me put this to you, because you're in Western Canada, which is the heart of reform country 25 years ago. And here's Preston Manning, the founder of the reform movement, who has embraced carbon pricing because he says embracing carbon pricing avoids putting conservatives in the contradictory position of appearing to favor regulation over market mechanisms for dealing with environmental challenges. He's somehow broken from the rest of you who are opposed to any kind of price on pollution. How do you explain that?
Look, I like Preston. He's a great guy. I disagree with him on this, and as well as some people in the States. Again, as I said, I think for a lot of some conservatives, it's a convenient get out of jail free card. They want to be seen as being good. They want their family to love them. They don't want their kids to be criticizing them, and they're willing to promote the idea of this carbon tax or carbon pricing scheme that has never been implemented anywhere and is unsustainable. I believe that near-term emission reductions is an improper focus. We don't have the technologies. It's expensive, it's unsustainable, and it's a waste of current resources that could be used better elsewhere.
Okay, with 2 minutes to go, jumping in here, because I want to put one more thing on the table, and that is actually to harken back to something you said a few minutes ago. You were being facetious, but Doug Ford means it. He wants to go to the border. He wants to put a big neon sign up saying Ontario's now open for business. Jim, my question for you is, given the cancellation of all the things we've talked about here, we haven't even talked about the almost 800 green energy contracts that have been canceled. Are you concerned this sends signals to the market with all of the new cancellations of these old contracts that actually Ontario is not open for business, and it's actually a kind of a risky place to do business, because if you sign a contract with the government, it may not last?
Like, if you're a business that wants to turn Ontario into a banana republic through Green Energy Acts, where you charge every single ratepayer in Ontario and the profits go to a select few, which is the definition of a banana republic, then Ontario should be closed for business to those individuals, because the pillage of ratepayers and taxpayers, that's enough after 15 years of rising hydro rates, of increasing taxation in stealth, with a cunning kind of deception of not being forthright about what the problem is going to be. So no, actually, I think if you're a business that's trying to sell these kind of contracts to government, and you know it's going to raise hydro rates or it's going to raise taxes, and there's not going to be the benefits that you suggest, then I think you think twice.
Let me save the last minute for Sarah.
So I admire your talking points, but I'm going to challenge you on that because I actually think we do need to be honest. So of the renewable energy contracts that this government canceled, about 80% of them were small-scale solar contracts on schools, in First Nations. And we're not actually saving any money because we didn't spend any money yet. So it's fine if we want to try and go down the road and hearken up all of the ills of the Green Energy Act, and I agree. Things could be done differently. Solar and wind are at a much more competitive price nowadays, and it's honest to go out and get those more competitive prices.
You know what? I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time.
She's right. They didn't go far enough with the decision. You're right, though.
We're going to lose our satellite to Calgary, and I can't have the program end without, because I'm polite, thanking Ken Green for being on the program. From the Fraser Institute, we had him on the line from Calgary, Alberta. Ken, thanks for joining us again. We also want to thank Tom Rand, managing partner of Arcturn Ventures, and then Sarah Petrovan, the Senior Policy Advisor for Clean Energy Canada, and Jim Karahalios, founder of Axe the Carbon Tax. Thanks so much, everybody.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.